Your reflection in the mirror doesn't lie. That person staring back at you, tired, beaten, questioning everything, that person has survived every single hard day of their life. 100% of them. And yet here you are, ready to walk away from the one fight that matters most, the fight for yourself. See, most people quit right before the breakthrough. They endure the storm for years. And then, when the sun is inches away from breaking through, they fold, they surrender. They hand over the pen and let life write the rest of their story for them. But not you, not today. Because somewhere deep inside you, beneath the doubt, beneath the exhaustion, beneath every voice that told you you're not enough, there is a fire that has refused to go out. It's been dim. It's been flickering, but it is still burning. And that fire, that's the truth of who you are. You didn't come this far to only come this far. You didn't survive your worst nights to quit on a difficult morning. Every scar you carry is proof that you were stronger than what tried to break you. Every setback you've endured was not a sign to stop. It was preparation for what's coming next. So before you walk away from yourself, before you write that final chapter of defeat, I need you to look in that mirror one more time and remember who you are. You were not born broken. Let me say that again. Because somewhere along the way, somebody convinced you otherwise. You were not born broken, but life has a way of making you feel like you were. It piles weight on your shoulders before you even know how to stand properly. It hands you grief before you understand loss. It gives you rejection before you've had enough success to know your own worth. And slowly, quietly, you start to believe that the pain you carry is simply who you are, that the struggle is your identity, that the heaviness is permanent, that this is just your life. And that is the greatest lie ever told. Pain is not your identity. Pain is your classroom. It is the place where character is built, where strength is forged, where the version of you that the world needs is slowly, sometimes painfully, being shaped. Every wound you've ever carried, every sleepless night, every moment you sat alone wondering why things had to be so hard, none of that was random. None of that was meaningless. It was preparation. All of it, every single piece of it. Think about gold for a moment. In its natural state, buried in the earth, it is surrounded by dirt, by rock, by everything that is not gold. And to get to the pure version of it, you have to put it through fire. Intense, relentless, unforgiving fire. The heat doesn't destroy the gold, it reveals it. It burns away everything that was never supposed to be there in the first place. And what comes out on the other side is something rare. Something valuable, something that could not have existed without the fire. That is you. You are not defined by what you've been through. You are revealed by it. The fire of your hardest seasons was not sent to destroy you. It was sent to strip away everything that was keeping you from yourself, the insecurity, the people-pleasing, the smallness you adopted to survive in spaces that were too tight for who you were becoming. The pain was burning it all away, layer by layer, revealing something underneath that is stronger, deeper, and more powerful than you have yet allowed yourself to believe. But here is where people get lost. Here is where the journey goes wrong for so many people who were so close to something real. They confuse the process for the verdict. When the fire is burning and the pressure is building and everything feels like it is falling apart, they look at that moment and they decide it means something about their future. They look at the wound and they say, this is who I am. They look at the struggle and they say, this is my destiny. They take a season, a temporary, purposeful, necessary season, and they tattoo it on their identity like it's a permanent truth. And from that moment on, they carry it. They introduce themselves with it. They make decisions from it. They shrink because of it. Your pain was never meant to be your name. Think about the people you admire most, the ones whose stories move you, the ones whose lives inspire you to believe in something bigger. Look closely at those stories, and you will find one thing they all have in common: suffering. Real, undeniable, gut-wrenching suffering. The kind that would have broken most people. The kind that, in the middle of it, probably felt like the end of everything. But it wasn't the end. It was the entry point. It was the door they had to walk through to get to the version of themselves that changed the world, changed their family, changed their own life from the inside out. Their pain was not their identity either. It was their preparation. And preparation is not comfortable. Nobody prepares for something great by sitting still. No athlete builds endurance without pushing past the point of pain. No muscle grows without resistance. No tree roots itself deeply without the pressure of wind forcing it downward and outward. The very things that were meant to destroy you were actually deepening you, strengthening you, rooting you so far down into who you are that when the real storm comes, and it will come, you will not be moved. But you have to stop seeing your struggle as evidence that you are losing. Because right now, in the middle of what you are carrying, it can feel like proof, like a verdict, like the universe looked at your life and decided that suffering was your portion. And I need you to understand something with everything inside of you. That is not truth. That is just the noise that lives in the gap between where you are and where you are going. That is the static that plays loudest when you are closest to a breakthrough. That is fear, wearing the costume of wisdom, trying to convince you to sit down right before you're about to stand up. Your pain has been shaping something in you that comfort never could have built. The empathy you carry for other people's struggles. Where did that come from? The resilience you've discovered in yourself when everything fell apart. Where did that come from? The wisdom that lives in you now, the depth, the understanding of what really matters. Where did that come from? It came from the fire. It came from the seasons that nearly broke you. It came from the very pain you've been trying to run from, because the pain was never the enemy. The pain was the teacher, and the lesson was never that you are not enough. The lesson has always been that you are more than you knew, that you are capable of carrying more than you thought, that you are able to survive things that should have stopped you, endure things that should have finished you, and rise from things that should have buried you. Every hard thing you have walked through has been quietly building a case for your strength, and you have been too focused on the weight to see the evidence. You are not your pain. You are what your pain has been building. Everyone wants the breakthrough. Nobody wants to talk about the moment right before it. That thin, brutal, invisible line between giving up and breaking through. Most people never even know they crossed it until they're standing on the other side looking back. And the terrifying truth is this: most people quit on that line, not before the hard part, not in the middle of the struggle, but right there, in the final moment, when everything inside them is screaming that it's over, when the evidence looks overwhelming, when the silence feels like an answer. That is exactly where they stop. And they never find out how close they were. There is something almost cruel about the way breakthroughs work. They don't announce themselves. They don't send a warning ahead of time to tell you to hold on just a little longer. They don't whisper in your ear that relief is coming, that the tide is about to turn, that everything you've been bleeding and sacrificing and pushing for is seconds away from becoming real. They just arrive, but only for the ones who stayed. Only for the ones who refused to leave the field when everything in them was begging to walk away. The moment you almost quit is not a sign that you should quit. It is a sign that something is about to shift. Think about water coming to a boil. You apply heat, consistent, relentless heat, and for a long time, nothing seems to happen. The water just sits there, still, unchanged. And if you didn't know better, you would think the heat wasn't working. You would think the effort was pointless. You would think that maybe this particular water in this particular pot simply wasn't meant to boil. But the heat is working. Beneath the surface, molecules are moving, energy is building, pressure is accumulating, and then, without warning, everything changes at once. The stillness breaks. The water erupts into motion. And it happens not because the heat suddenly got stronger, but because enough had been applied over enough time that the breakthrough became inevitable. Your life works the same way. The years you've been applying heat, the prayers, the discipline, the late nights, the early mornings, the tears you cried alone, the times you showed up when you had every reason not to, all of that has been accumulating beneath the surface. You may not be able to see it. You may look at your life right now and see stillness, see nothing moving, see no evidence that anything is working. But energy does not disappear. Effort does not evaporate. Every single thing you have poured into your dream, your healing, your growth, your future, it is all still there, building, layering, pressing toward a moment that you cannot yet see, but that is closer than you have ever been. And the moment you feel most like quitting is usually the moment the water is about to boil. Because here is what nobody tells you about the breakthrough. The pressure peaks right before it arrives. The darkness gets its darkest right before the light breaks through. The resistance becomes its most intense in the final moments before something new is born. This is not a coincidence. This is not the universe being cruel. This is the nature of transformation. Real change does not happen gradually and comfortably right up until the finish line. It compresses, it intensifies, it pushes back hardest when you are closest to crossing over into something new. So when you feel like you cannot take one more day, understand what that feeling might actually mean. It might not mean you are finished. It might mean you are close. It might not mean the journey has gone on too long. It might mean the journey is about to deliver everything it promised. The exhaustion you feel is real, but exhaustion is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of effort. And effort sustained long enough always produces something. Always. But you have to still be in the room when it arrives. Think about every person who ever told you about a moment their life changed. A moment when something finally broke open for them. A door that opened. A call that came through. A relationship that healed. A business that took off. A body that recovered. A mind that found peace. Ask them what they were feeling right before that moment. Ask them where they were mentally in the days and weeks leading up to the breakthrough. And most of them will tell you the same thing. They were at their lowest. They were exhausted. They were questioning everything. They were this close to walking away, but they didn't walk away. And that one decision, that single act of staying when every instinct said leave, changed the entire trajectory of what came next. Not because they were superhuman, not because they had something other people don't have, but because they understood, consciously or not, that the hardest moment is not the time to surrender. The hardest moment is the time to dig in. You have been digging in for longer than you give yourself credit for. Every morning you woke up when you didn't want to. That was digging in. Every time you chose to keep going after a setback that should have stopped you, that was digging in. Every moment you sat with your pain instead of numbing it, every time you chose honesty over comfort, every time you got back up off the floor when the floor felt safer than standing, all of it was digging in. All of it was you refusing to be finished by something that was only trying to refine you. And none of that effort has been wasted. The seed doesn't look like it's doing anything while it's underground. It looks dead. It looks like nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, roots are forming, structure is being built, life is organizing itself for an emergence that will look sudden to everyone watching, but that has been years in the making. That is not failure in the ground. That is preparation. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not too late, and you are not too broken, and you have not gone too far down the wrong road to find your way back to something real. You are a seed in the ground that is about to break the surface. There is a version of you that has already been through hell. Not metaphorically, not as a figure of speech. Literally, a version of you that has sat in the darkest rooms, that has carried weight that would have crushed most people, that has faced nights so long and so heavy that morning felt like a rumor. A version of you that had every logical, reasonable human right to stay down, to quit, to close the door on everything and simply stop trying. And that version of you got up anyway. That is not a small thing. That is not something to glance over or minimize or dismiss in the rush to get to the next chapter. That is one of the most profound truths about who you are. That the person standing here today, reading these words, carrying whatever they are carrying right now, that person has a survival rate of 100%. Every hard day you have ever faced, you have come out the other side. Every storm that was supposed to be the one that finally broke you, you are still here, still breathing, still standing, still somehow in the fight, and now you are thinking about giving up on yourself. I need you to feel the weight of that contradiction, because the person who survived everything you have survived does not deserve to be abandoned, especially not by you. Especially not by the one person who was there for every single moment of it. You were there when nobody else was. You were there in the silence, in the suffering, in the moments when the world kept moving and your life felt frozen. You showed up for yourself in the hardest ways, in the darkest hours, when showing up took everything you had and you had almost nothing left. That person deserves your loyalty. There is a kind of betrayal that nobody talks about, the betrayal of self-abandonment. The moment you decide that you are not worth fighting for anymore. The moment you look at your own life and conclude that the investment is not worth it, that the return will never come, that the person you could become is simply not achievable for someone like you. And it is a quiet betrayal. It doesn't feel dramatic in the moment. It creeps in slowly, dressed as practicality, dressed as wisdom, dressed as acceptance. It tells you that giving up is the mature thing to do. That letting go of the dream is growth. That settling is peace. But there is a difference between surrender and peace. And deep down you know it. Real peace does not feel like giving up. Real peace does not sit in your chest like a stone. Real peace does not wake you up at 3 a.m. with a hollow ache that you cannot name but cannot ignore. What you feel when you abandon yourself is not peace. It is grief. The grief of a life unlived. The grief of a version of you that never got the chance to exist because you decided in a moment of exhaustion that they weren't worth the fight, but they are worth the fight. You are worth the fight. Think about the version of you that was 10 years old before the world got to you. Before the disappointment stacked up, before people left, before failure made you afraid to try, before life taught you to shrink yourself to avoid the pain of being seen and falling short. That child had a vision of who they were going to become. They had dreams that felt as real and as certain as the ground beneath their feet. They believed without a single doubt that they were going somewhere. That they were going to be something, that life was going to open up into something magnificent. That child is still inside you. And every single hard day you have survived, you have been carrying them. Every time you got up off the floor, you were protecting them. Every time you refused to let a setback be the final word on your story, you were keeping their dream alive. You have been doing it unconsciously, instinctively, because something in you has always known that there is more, that this is not the whole story, that the page has not run out, that there is still something worth fighting for on the other side of what you are currently walking through. You owe it to that child to keep going. You owe it to the version of you that survived the thing that should have broken you. You owe it to the person you were in your worst moment, the one who chose, even then, to hold on. Because that person made a decision under impossible conditions. They decided that tomorrow was worth getting to. They decided that life still had something in it for them, even when the evidence said otherwise. They invested in a future that they couldn't yet see, paid for it with their pain, and handed it to you. Do not spend that investment on quitting. Because here is what happens when you abandon yourself. You don't just affect your present. You reach back and you retroactively make every hard thing you survived feel meaningless. Every moment you pushed through, every tear you cried while still moving forward, every sacrifice you made in the name of something better, all of it becomes a story that ends in surrender. And you are too valuable, your journey is too significant, your survival has been too hard won for the story to end there. Your history of survival is not a coincidence. It is a pattern. And patterns tell you something about what is possible. The fact that you are still here after everything is data. It is evidence about who you are and what you are made of. It tells you that you are someone who does not break easily, someone who carries more than most people could carry, someone who has a depth of resilience that has been tested repeatedly and has not failed yet. You have not failed yet. You are still in this. You are still standing at the edge of the possibility of everything changing, everything shifting, everything finally becoming what you always believed it could be. The version of you that survived every hard day did not come this far so that you could stop now.